2022 ensimmäiseen Rapakanaalin varrelta lähetykseen. Ja tehdään kaikkien aikojen paluu useamman hiljaisen kuukauden jälkeen. Ja, meillä on täällä jälleen meidän lähes studion kaltaisissa olosuhteissa on Olli Nevala, tervetuloa.
Kiitos, kiitos.
Ja sitten lähes tuommoisessa virallisen valvojan roolissa Veppe Tervaskangas, tervetuloa.
Kiitoksia.
Mitä miehille kuuluu?
Hyvä kiitos. Hyvä kiitos. Se oli oikein mukava tulla taas studioon puhumaan asiaa jalkapallosta.
Mitä Veppe?
No, tässä on päästy alkuun ja tämä on kiva, että päästiin jo tähän vaiheeseen, että ollaan tämmöinen ensimmäinen linjoille. Niin alku on saatu käyntiin.
Joo, meillä oli tuossa jo ensimmäinen vieras, eli Jaron yksi tähtihankinnoista Jacob Bushue. Ja hänen kanssaan tuossa juteltiin ja jäi todella positiivinen kuva hänestä. Totta kai osasi odottaakin, kun paljon hyvää on kuullut, mutta Olli, kerro vähän, mitä siitä jää käteen.
No, tosi hyvä kuva kaverista sai, että tapasin herran ensimmäistä kertaa ja tosi ystävällisen tuntunen kaveri ja itse varma, kuten pohjois-amerikkalaiset usein on ja hyvin fiksun oloinen kaveri, joka huomaa, että ajattelee juttuja paljon, ajattelee paljon treeniä ja pelien ulkopuolella futikseen liittyviä asioita ja tosiaan tulee varmaan olemaan hänestä paljon iloa Jarossa.
Sanoit hyvin tuossa äsken, ennen kuin laitettiin tämä nauhoitus pyörimään, että tämmöistä pelaajaa Jarolla ei kauhean usein, jos koskaan on ollut, että hän puhuu, ei nyt kerrota koko haastattelun sisältöä, mutta hän puhuu siinä esimerkiksi, kuinka hän opiskelee johtamista ja se on hänelle tärkeää ja oli hyvin tommonen, no kuvasit hyvin, niin vähän niin kuin työyhteisönä piti seuraa, niin tuo on aika uutta ainakin, mitä itse on tottunut näkemään.
Kyllä, että tosiaan aika virkistävä kokemus oli kuunnella hänen juttua ja varmaan kuuntelijatkin saa paljon irti hänen jutustaan, että tuossa tunnin verran puhuttiin hänen kanssaan ja juttua häneltä kyllä riitti.
Veppä, sä tietysti näet päivittäistä tekemistä, niin siellä kopissa ja harjoituksissa varmaan näkyy Bushun johtaja-ominaisuudet.
Kyllä, se on alusta asti ensimmäisen kerran kun tavattiin ja näin miehen treenaavan ja sekä kentällä sekä sitten tuolla puukoppi ja kentän ulkopuolella, niin loistava persona tähän joukkueeseen.
No joukkueesta kun puhut, niin ehkäpä me nyt sitten katsotaan, että minkälainen Jaro meidän mielestä on kasassa nyt, kun seura on ilmoittanut, että joukkue on ainakin toistaiseksi tässä. Pelaajasopimukset on tehty ne mitä tulee, niin jos mä nyt oman ajatuksen heitän, niin musta tuntuu, että tässä takaisin aika ilmiselvää, että tässä joukkueessa on enemmän laatua kuin vuosi sitten, kun katsoo sitä ihan niin kokonaisuudessaan, niin siellä on paljon laadukkaita pelaajia. Oletteko te siitä samaa mieltä?
Ilman muuta joo, että tosiaan laatua on enemmän kuin viime kaudella ja että hyviä yksilöitä on tullut uutena tähän joukkueeseen että varmaan jos verrataan niin pelaaja pelaajalta niin että tosiaan sitä laatua on enemmän, että totta kai se pitää sitten saada nivottua yhteen ja toimivaksi kokonaisuudeksi, mutta tosiaan että laatua joukkueessa on paljon.
Joo, muistan, jos nyt palaan vaikka tuohon Bushuhun, niin muistan jo Eiffin paidasta puhumattakaan sitä Hakan paidasta, niin katsoin, että tuommoinen jätkä olisi niin hieno saada Jaroon, niin koska pelkästään hänen tyylinen pelaa siihen pelin ytimeen on todella iso palanen sitten Jaron peliä. Ja sitten totta kai siellä on, jos nyt lähtee joukkuetta sitten vaikka alhaalta liikkeelle, niin maalivahtitilanne on nyt aika selvä. Savchenko lähtee selvänä ykkösmaalivahtina, vaikka siinä on kaksi hyvää nuorta kirittäjää, mutta on kuitenkin ihan Jimmy Varikin ÖT:n podcastissa sanoo, että lähtee kuitenkin ykkösmaalivahtina ja mun mielestä Mikita on hyvinkin mitattava ykkösen maalivahti.
Ilman muuta ja on varmaan on vuoden kokeneempi ja oli aika hyvä jo viime kaudella ja tosiaan voisi olettaa sopisi, että on vielä parempi tulevalla kaudella, että sillä osastolla tuskin tulee olemaan ongelmia, niin kuin jos Mikita vaan pysyy kasvassa.
Joo, varmaan siinä lähinnä joku kommunikaatiopuoli, että ilmeisesti englantia hän ei kai ihan hirveän hyvin puhu, mutta niin kauan kun maalevahti palloja torjuu, niin sillä nyt kieliongelmatkin kyllä peittää.
No tähän mulla on heittää vähän sisäpiirin asiaa, eli tänä kun tätä lähetystä nauhoitettaessa, niin mies on ollut tämän päivän ensimmäisellä englannin kurssilla.
Okei, se on hienoa.
Ja mennään helmikuun alkua, että tässä on vielä 2 kuukautta reilu kauden alkuun, niin saattaa olla, että siellä on kunnon British boy siellä sitten kausi alkaa. Ja tähän vielä sitten tähän, että pitää muistaa, että myös nämä meidän toiset maalivahit, nämä nuoret maalivahit on myös menossa eteenpäin. Eli molemmat tulee varmasti antaa, että mä en näe niin selvänä itse ykkösmaalivahtia, että mun mielestä siellä on tervettä kilpailua ja ihan kaikilla on mahdollisuus sinne nousta.
Ja eikös toppareista, eikös Kulpis puhu Venäjää suht hyvin, niin se varmaan vähän edesauttaa kommunikointia myös.
Kyllä, mutta varmaan voidaan kaikki ne todeta, että maalivahtiosasto on kunnossa, että siitä ei kausi kyllä kiinni tule jäämään.
Ei.
Puolustuksesta, jos jatketaan, niin siellä nyt tietysti iso jatkosopimus oli Sotelon jatkaminen siis muun muassa. Ja hänellä nyt varmaan se aika selvä vasemman laitapakin paikka on, sikäli kun näyttää siltä, että mistä Jimmy on puhunut, että 4-3-3 on se peli tai ryhmitys, mitä nyt pääasiassa tullaan käyttämään, niin Soteloa nyt on hankala sieltä kipata pois.
No se on selvää, että hän tulee pelaamaan kyllä niin kuin aina kun on vaan kunnossa, tai kun ei ole pelikielossa.
Jompikumpi. Joo. Mutta sitten mun mielestä myöskin yksi joukkueen vahvuuksia on tuo topparikolmikko. Siinä on Brunel ja Kulpis ja sitten Franklin Okoi, niin mun mielestä siinä on tosi vahva kolmikko. Että jos joku niistä on pois, niin silti saa edelleen todella vahvan parin.
Joo, sillä osastolla voi tulla jopa positiivinen ongelma Imylle eteen, että siinä on kolme hyvää ehdokasta, että ketkä tahansa 2 niistä voi laittaa kentälle. Että kysymys kuuluukin, että joutuu Immy harkitsemaan 3 topparin pelisysteemiä, niin kuin jos nuo kaikki 3 on niin hyviä kuin mitä ainakin minä tällä hetkellä uskon.
Joo, ja tuostahan Jimmy puhuu siinä samaisessa eteen haastattelussa, että voi käydä niin, että yksinkertaisesti ne on liian hyviä, että sitä istuisi penkillä, ja se on totta kai sitten positiivinen ongelma se. Sitten jos miettii taas oikeita laitapakkeja, niin siellä on ehkä sitten vähän toisenlainen tilanne, että siellä ei välttämättä ihan semmoista selkeää avaajaa ole. Jimmy on nostanut esiin sitä, että Adam Vieraana, että häntä tullaan käyttämään myöskin oikeana pakkina, ja sitten tietysti Aaron Ljungberg, joka menee selkeästi koko ajan eteenpäin. Hän on fyysisesti mun silmiin erittäinkin valmis pelaamaan ykköstä. Kokemusta ykkösestä ei vielä ole paljon, mutta sitähän saa pelaamalla, että siellä on aika hyvä semmoinen kilpailutilanne.
Kyllä, ja tosiaan Ljungberg ainakin puolustussuuntaan tulee varmaan olemaan ihan mitat täyttävä laitapuolustaja, että en ole senkään osalta huolestunut.
Veppe, onko Jarolla tiukka puolustus?
Kyllä, kaikin puoli ja tuo toppari vielä totta kai kolme ihan niin kuin varsinaista topparia, mutta sitten täytyy muistaa, että meillä on Marre, Vari on siellä pystyy sen täyttämään, ja myös sitten tämä mainittu jo Vieraana, hän pelasi tuossa jo ensimmäisen ykköskupioottelun, niin pelasi topparina, mun mielestä pelasi oikein hyvän pelin.
Joo, hyvä lisäys, että siihen löytyy äkkiä heittää 5 nimeä, jotka pystyy pelata, ja vähän tämän tapauksessa ilmeisesti Bushuekin topparina joitakin minuutteja joskus pelannut, niin sieltä nyt ei miehet ensimmäisenä lopu kesken kyllä.
Ei.
Toinen paikka, mistä miehet ei ensimmäisenä lopu kesken, on keskikentän keskusta. Siellä on laatua, mutta siellä on myöskin määrää. Miten Olli nivoisit sen yhteen?
Paljonko meillä on aikaa tähän, niin käydään läpi tämä keskikenttäosasta. No vitsi, mutta siellä on tosiaan siellä on tungosta. Ja on sekä laatua että määrää, että se osasto on todella hyvä. Että se tosiaan jos ajatellaan niin pelaajalta, niin Bushue on vähän niin kuin Toron tilalle ja se on, odotan, että on pykälää parempi pelaaja ja sitten siihen niin tendens sitten siihen niin hyökkäävään keskikenttäpelaajan rooliin on niin kuin parempi kuin kukaan sillä tontilla viime vuonna, että jo siltä osin niin kuin on niin kuin sitä laatua on enemmän ja sen lisäksi on paljon mitat täyttäviä pelaajia sille keskentälle, että on jo mainittu Adam Videskog, Maku Kronholm ja sitten nämä nuoret Marrevari, Benjamin Östman. Niin, siellä kyllä eivät pelaajat tule loppumaan.
Joo, ja mä luulen, että siinä on riittävästi laatua siihen, että jos ajattelee viime vuonna Jaro aika usein saattoi puolustaa aika paljon ilman palloa, niin mä luulen, että tänä vuonna se tulee sitten muuttumaan, että siinä on varmasti sitä syöttöosaamista ehkä eri tavalla, liikettä myöskin eri tavalla kuin viime vuonna. Mä luulen, että pelin kuvavoimia on niin keskimäärin vähän vaihtua toisenlaiseksi ja ehkä enemmän semmoista, mitä Pietarsaaressa on totuttu myöskin näkemään.
Kyllä.
Mä halusin ottaa tähän nyt, halusin kuunnella teidän ensin mitä Antoni Hotta. Kyllä, ja mies, miten se on lähtenyt tähän nyt heti alusta mukaan ja omiinkin sanojen mukaan löytänyt jalkapallon uudestaan. Piti vuoden vai 2 tuossa paussia ja viime vuonna toki oli JVK:ssa, mutta sitä ennen niin tulee olemaan semmoinen mulla ainakin, mitä mä haluan tai tulen seuraamaan paljon ja mulle se on se musta hevonen. Joo, siis sama fiilis itsellä. Mähän en ole Hottaa nähnyt kentällä kauhean usein, siis vaikka nimi on tuttu, mutta kun ei kauhean monta 90 on tullut nähtyä ja nyt nämä 2 peliä, mitä on sitten nähnyt eri välityksellä, niin minusta on näyttänyt hyvältä. Siirrytäänkö me joukkueessa sitten eteenpäin, vai oliko jotakin muuta lisättävää?
Ei oikeastaan, mennään eteenpäin.
Ehkäpä sitten, jos ajatellaan nyt lähtökohtaisesti sitä 4-3-3, niin siellä täytyy laita hyökkääjiä olla, niin minkälaisia miehiä meillä löytyy sinne?
Imyrevik, Alvin Björkskog, Joni Remesaho. Sitten on heidän lisäkseen sitten varmaan joitain, jotka niinku pystyy pelaamaan niillä tonteilla. Östman. Mutta varmaan noista 3 niin etupäässä ne laiturit tulee löytymään.
Joo, ja siellä on ehkä enemmän, siis tietyllä tapaa enemmän kysymysmerkkejä, siis lähinnä sen suhteen, että kuka siellä aloittaa. Että siellä on aika erilaisia, mutta ehkä niin kuin tasaisia vaihtoehtoja. Ja jos miettii vaikka Björkskogia, jonka viime kausi oli, tuskin kukaan nyt odotti, että hän on noin hyvä, mitä hän viime kaudella on, ja todennäköisesti on tänä vuonna taas sitten pykälän parempi, tai sitten parikin, niin voi olla yhtäkkiä niin, että hän on hyvin usein avauskokoonpanossa. Mä näen, että hänessä on paljon semmoista potentiaalia, minkä kautta hän pystyy olemaan ykkösessä oikein hyvä pelaaja. Että jotenkin siis häntä on varmaan vaikea puolustaa häntä vastaan, että ylipäätään pelata, kun hän sähisee vähän joka suuntaan ja monesti näyttää siltä, että no ei se voi tonne ehtiä millään, mutta niin se taistelee pallon itselleensä. Ja sitten totta kai Remesaho on kokenut pelaaja ja Myrevik, jonka nyt voi varmaan maaliinkin laittaa ja homma toimii. Ja todennäköisesti nyt hätätapauksessa Tendengin voi laittaa laidalla, jos siellä on syystä tai toisesta vajausta. Mutta siellä on ehkä, että siinä missä joillekin paikoille löytyy, että okei, nuo kaverit todennäköisesti aloittaa, niin itse ehkä pysty suoraan sitten noihin laitahyökkäille, kuka siellä on tai minkälainen se nokkimisjärjestys on. Ehkä se tarvinnut helmikuussa vielä meidän tavalla selvä ollakaan.
Ja se oli tosiaan jo mainittu Björkskog, niin se mikä pisti silmään hänen pelissä viime kaudella, että hän pelasi hyvin ennakkoluulottomasti ja sillä, että ei tuntunut jännittävän ja paljon sillä älykkäitä juoksuja, jotka sitten tuo tilaa muille ja Myrevik pystyy tekemään samaa ja oikein roolitettuna niin hän on ihan hyvä ykkösen laituri ja Jonilta odotan tiettyä tason nostoa tälle kaudelle sitten ja jos näin tapahtuu, niin kyllä siellä ihan toimiva paketti pitäisi olla silläkin osastolla.
Joo, sitten meillä on oikeastaan se sentterin paikka tuossa käsittelemättä, niin Severi Kähkönen tietysti tuli takaisin Jaroon, mikä on Jarolle iso juttu ilman muuta. Ja Jimmy Varin on puhunut siitä mediassa, että lähtökohtaisesti Severi on hyökkääjä tässä joukkueessa. Ja sitten on toinen luontainen sentteri on tietysti Alex Ramsey. Et siinä kai ne 2 vaihtoehtoa käytännössä on tällä hetkellä. Ja no Ramsey on totta kai ollut tässä jo niin pari vuotta mukana, on sellainen selkeä sentterityyppi. Ja sitten Kähkönen on sentterinä pelannut ja ominaisuudethan sopii tosi hyvin sentteriksi. Hän voi olla älyttömän hyvä siinä, mutta sitten totta kai aika näyttää, että miten hyvin se toimii. Mutta isokokoinen pelaaja, joka on taitava ja nopea ja osaa viimeistellä, niin on se kaikki edellytykset saada se homma toimimaan.
Kyllä, ja tosiaan ominaisuuksien puolesta niin sopii tosi hyvin sille paikalle, kuten sanoit, mutta mä en välttämättä näe sitä, niin siinä Severin niin kuin parhaimpana paikkana, vaan että näkisi se mieluusti siinä niin kuin hiukan alempana kentällä. Mutta,
joo, samoin. Jos valita saisi, mutta...
Joo, mutta ei, varmaan se tulee toimimaan ja paljon on siitä tulee olemaan kyse kanssa, että miten esimerkiksi Tendeng ja Kähkönen tulee sitten löytämään toisensa kentälle. Ja, että jos heidän yhteispeli natsaa, niin kyllä se aika tappava kaksikko niin kuin ykköseen voi olla. Että.
Joo, jos tuohon Tendengin vielä puuttuu, niin mietitte vaikka 4-5 vuotta sitten, kun joku olisi sanonut, että Tendeng tulee pelaamaan Jaron ykköstä. Mm-hmm. Se olisi tuntunut lähinnä nyt semmoiselta huonolta vitsiltä, että no joo, niin varmaan. Mutta kyllähän Tendeng on parhaimmillaan ollut ihan käsittämättömän hyvä pelaaja Suomeen.
Joo.
Ja sitten kun omaan silmään, eikä se nyt ole varmasti, tai enkä varmasti ole ainut, jonka silmiin se näyttää siltä, että ero Veikkausliigan ja ykkösen välillä on kasvanut vuosien aikana. Ykkösessä on joskus kohtuu paljon aikaa ja tilaa joissakin peleissä, niin ton tason kaveri voi tehdä aikamoisia temppuja siellä kentällä kyllä.
Kyllä. Ja tosiaan hänellä on ollut nyt niinku, näin edes muutamat kaudet ei ole mennyt niin hyvin, mutta käsittääkseni hänellä on ollut vähän niinku pientä vammaa vähän jatkuvasti, että jos pysyy kunnossa niin varmaan tulee olemaan hyvä vahvistus.
Joo, ja mä näin jonkun haastattelun niin viime vuodelta. Siinä häneltä kysyttiin omasta kaudestaan, niin sanoi vaan siinä, että kun häntä pelutettiin sekä sentterinä että keskikentän pohjalla ja kumpikaan ei hänelle oikein sopiva paikka ole. Että ilmeisesti siinä oli sitten osa tekijä siihen, että ei homma niin hyvin toiminut. Toki Maarianhaminan kausi nyt oli joka tapauksessa aika vaikea, että siellä ei oikein ole kovinkaan monen pelaajan kohdalla toiminut. Peppe, meidän sisäpiirin lähde. Miltä Tendeng on näyttänyt muutaman, tai varmaan ehkä muutama on liioiteltu, mutta ne harjoitusten aikana, mitä on miestä päässyt näkemään? No
täytyy sen verran sanoa kyllä, että mullakin on jäänyt vähän nykyään tässä viime kauteen verrattuna siviilityön muuttuessa, niin on muuttunut, niin mä tuun treeneihin sen verran myöhään ja eihän se nyt ole tässäkin tehtäessäni ollut viikon verran täällä näin, että ei oikein vielä, mutta se pieni vähän mitä on nähnyt, niin tuo sitä semmoista ammattimaisuutta siihen ja mitä tässä vähän vielä paljastan tuosta Bushuen haastattelusta, niin on semmoinen vaatii itseltään, vaatii joukkueelta. Se näkee tässä vaiheessa. Tulee olemaan semmoinen myös tuommoinen henkisesti noiden fyysisten taitojen lisäksi tulee olemaan myös henkisesti semmoinen johtohahmo tuossa joukkueessa.
Jos joukkuetta koittaa jollakin tapaa niputtaa, niin en tiedä, oletteko samaa mieltä. Nyt mä pikkusen kärjistän, että saatte kiinni, mitä mä tarkoitan, mutta ehkä tänä vuonna on enemmän satsattu siihen, että joukkueeseen saadaan mahdollisimman hyviä pelaajia sen sijaan, että mietittäisiin, että jokaiselle paikalle vaikkapa on niin juuri siihen rooliin sopiva pelaaja. Siis tarkoitan nyt vaikka sitä, kun Jimmy Vari taas viittaa tuohon Öteen hyvin tekemään haastatteluun, missä Jimmy sanoi, että kun etittiin viimeistä hyökkäyspään pelaaja, joka oli sitten Tenden, että se ei ollut niin merkittävää, että mihin paikkaan niillä ylimmällä 4 paikalla se pelaaja löytyy, kunhan hän on riittävän hyvä. Ja mun mielestä se ehkä näkyy tuossa koko joukkueen kasaamisessa, että siihen on panostettu.
Kyllä se vähän siltä vaikuttaa. Ja Jimmy oli hyvin vakuuttava siinä ÖT:n haastattelussa, että tosiaan hän uskoo siihen niin kuin näihin ratkaisuja, näin pitää ollakin, mutta että on kaikki semmoista antoi hyvin vahvasti sen kuvan, että kaikki nämä ratkaisut, mitä on tehty, on tietoisia, että kyllä hän uskoo vahvasti tähän.
Joo, totta kai budjetti on rajallinen niin kauan, että meistä joku voittaa Eurojackpotissa, niin kauan joutuu miettiä. Ja ei se huono ratkaisu. Siis totta kai siinä jää kysymyksiä, että no, jos nyt käy niin, että niin joku paikka nyt ei toimi kentällä ja todetaan, että no, itse asiassa tonne nyt ei loppuviimein löytynyt oikeastaan pelaajaa. Viittaan nyt vaikka siihen, että jos kävisi niin, että vaikka se sentteripaikka ei toimi, niin okei, sit se niin kuin iskee vähän vastaan, mutta niin kun ajattelee ykköstä, joka on tänä vuonna ehkä laadultaan heikompi kuin vaikkapa viime vuonna, jolloin silloinkaan niin ei siellä ollut semmoista selkeää ehkä ykkösjoukkuetta tai semmoista niin kuin hallitsevaa joukkuetta. Ja se, että sä tuot joukkueeseen nyt sitten vaikkapa Bushuen ja Tendengin tasoisia pelaajia, niin vaikka se joukkue ei olisi maailman tasapainoisimmin kasattu, kun ei ole joka paikalle riittänyt vaihtoehtoja, niin se voi silti riittää tosi pitkälle, että sulla on noin hyviä pelaajia siellä.
Kyllä. Ja sitten ykkösen joukkueethan ei ole välttämättä niin miten sitä sanoisi, niin kuin taktisesti niin hyviä tai niin kuin, että ei ole niin kuin pelisysteemit on niin loppuunsa hiottuja, että joukkueet osais iskeä niin hyvin niin kuin tiettyihin heikkoihin kohtiin joukkueessa, että se antaa pikkasen enemmän anteeksi ykkösessä kuin liigassa, jos on niin kuin jotain heikkoja kohtia. En mä sitä sano, että Jarolla niitä tulee olemaan, mutta näin niin kuin vaan esimerkkinä, että kyllä se tosiaan niin kuin se voi jo se niin kuin se kun on paljon laatua kentällä, niin se voi ykkösessä riittää pitkällekin.
Joo, ja sitten tietysti on suhteellistahan se on, jos miettii vaikka, että nyt ei ole ihan selkeää, että kuka vaikkapa aloittaa oikeana laitapakkina, niin siitä huolimatta vaihtoehdot on juuri vaikkapa, että siellä pelaa Adam Vidieskuk, joka on hyvä ykkösen pelaaja, niin totta kai se on vain niin suhteellista, kuinka iso se ongelma on sitten. On. Jos ylipäätään siis on, mutta ymmärrätte mitä tarkoitan.
Joo.
Peppe, heitä joku tämmöinen tiukka loppukaneetti ennen kuin ruvetaan kuuntelemaan Jacob Bushuen haastattelua.
No vähän lisätä tuohon, että kun puhuttiin tästä, että niitä sopimuksia on nyt vähemmän kuin viime vuonna. Pitää muistaa se, että niistä viime vuoden sopimuksista 5 pelaajaa lähti juhannuksen aikaa armeijaan. Eli ne oli sen jälkeen minuutteja, mitä ne oli mukana.
Joo, ja korona taisi asettaa siihen aika mahdottomat tilanteet.
Kyllä. Eli viime vuonnakin tultiin ottamaan JBK:sta. JBK:ssa meillä on edelleen kasvaa semmoisia pelaajia, jotka oli ehkä lähellä tänä vuonna saada sopimukset, mutta ei vielä. Mutta meillä on se etu, että me pystytään niitä sieltä tarvittaessa käyttämään, niin siellä meillä on vielä sitten semmoinen reservi niin sanottuna.
Tehdäänkö me niin, että me pistetään vuoden ensimmäinen haastattelu nyt sitten tästä pyörimään?
Kyllä, näin tehdään.
Näin, meillä on saapunut meidän tämän vuoden ensimmäinen vieras tänne lähetykseen. Jacob Bushue, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome for my side as well. So how are you doing?
Doing good. Working on the second week now of preseason, so getting up to match fitness and everything, and getting to know the town and all the players and that. But it's been very good so far.
Yeah, so good first impression of the town and the club and.
Yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, when I was coming to Jakobstad, I thought it would be, a bit less to it than there is. Valkeakoski has a pretty similar population, but when it comes to the actual town, there's so much more to it. Jakobstad compared to Valkeakoski, so it's been a great great beginning to this.
Then what have you found in this city?
No, I mean, just like walking down like the different stores, the different restaurants, everything like that. When I'm comparing it to where I've been, it really is a lot more than the past places.
Yeah.
So you spent the holidays back home in the US, or you come from Illinois, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is it a small town where you come from? Or?
So I'm from Champaign, Illinois. That's about 2 hours south of Chicago. So there's 80,000 people-ish. When I was growing up, it was less. But it does have like a really small town atmosphere to it. And you know, relative to other places in the United States, it is a small-ish town. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I prefer living, are smaller places rather than cities.
Yeah, so how did you start playing football?
When I was 4, something like that. My brother's 10 years older than me. My sister's 8 years older than me. They both played growing up. They were both good, so obviously when I'm 5, it's already part of the family. And then I was good at it. So, of course, if you're good at it from a young age, you're going to enjoy it and all of those things, so that it's just progressed from there.
Did you try any other sports?
Yeah, so I did the basketball, baseball, soccer, of course, track and cross country. I never did the American football, but yeah, I did. You know, most of the American sports that you'll see. I stopped all of them besides soccer when I was 13. Basically, soccer was always like the number one thing I was doing, and everything else was kind of like on the side or training or because I was a good athlete. So I was doing it for my town or my school. But then once I was 13, 14, then it was just, I knew this is 100% what I need to do. That kind of thing.
When you were like 13, 14, I think you moved to Chicago to play a club there, which is quite far away.
So I didn't move there. I would just play there, which was even crazier. Okay. So I was going, I mean, my parents are superheroes. But I was still living in Champaign, but I would drive 2.5 hours for practice. And then, you know, obviously the games were actually at a different place. They were a little bit closer. They were only an hour and a half away. So I remember for games, it was like almost like a vacation, that it was an hour shorter kind of thing. But yeah, it was crazy trips. Basically, I would go to school, and then as soon as I would get out of school, my dad would be waiting for me after he had just got done working. He would drive me up to practice. I would practice with my team and then an older team. My dad would sleep in the car while I was training. Then he would drive me back, and then I was home at like 11 or midnight or something like that, and then up to school the next day.
How often did you do that?
2 times a week, and then obviously weekends.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you felt that it was necessary for your development, or?
Yes, I mean, in Champaign, if you look at it, just within an hour radius of Champaign, I'm the only professional soccer player ever. So it's kind of like I was almost a big fish in a small pond kind of situation. I thought I had kind of maxed out my progression there. I had you do these different programs that are, the best players in the state will get together, the best players in the region of your country will get together, all those things. And I had always shown well there. And basically I knew that I needed to challenge myself further and play with these players up in Chicago more often, and play in these bigger tournaments and play on the more national stages and those kind of things to keep elevating my game and my knowledge and my status, basically.
Did you consider to move then?
There was so my brother started coaching for the club that I played at after a year or two, something like that. So then he moved up there, and there was like a brief talk about me going and living there, but my parents kind of put the axe on that real quick. So there was a brief talk about me going up, but not really.
Yeah. And after your youth career, you moved to University of Indiana. Mm-hmm. What kind of memories you have from those years?
I use the best. Like that was like a. So it's really it's so different. It's hard to explain to European people or anything how the university with sports works, because like when I was 18, or I guess I was 17 when I went to college, there was 3 players or 2 players that turned professional that were my age, that were Americans. Everybody else goes to college. Like that's what you do. Now the landscape's different. Now people are turning professional when they're 14, 15, 16 all the time. But when I was coming up, it was you went to university, all the best players played there, that's where you go. So Indiana was like the program in the region of America that I'm from. So it's probably one of the top 5 programs that you can go to in the whole country. So when they came knocking, I was, of course, going to go. So I played for an unbelievable coach with great players. Indiana, the campus is incredible. Like, obviously, there's the party scene and the party culture there that is a bit distracting. But I wouldn't take any of that away from what I did, because some of those memories there are just unbelievable. Like, and some of the friendships that I made with that are, like, some of my best friends to this day are my teammates from then. And then, of course, we win a national championship in my 3rd year. And that was a unbelievable experience as well. And, you know, it had been kind of a national championship drought for the university, so then getting it back on track was obviously a huge deal for me as well.
What did you study in the university?
Sports management. Oh. But, I mean, that degree, yeah. I ain't gonna use that. I'll be a coach when I'm done playing. And I've kind of known I was gonna be a coach since I was 16 or 17. Like, I've always done coaching on the side since I was 19. I think it was the first time I started coaching, and then everywhere I've gone, I do a little bit on the side, just kind of preparing, knowing that that's going to be the next stage, that kind of thing. So I was just picking a degree that maybe had to do with sports, but really it was something that I could just kind of do and get away with while focusing on soccer. So
both your sister and brother are coaches?
My brother is. My sister used to be.
Okay.
She's a teacher now.
Okay. And they both used to play football as well.
Yeah. My sister was a baller. Like, she was like she has, I'm trying to remember how many goals it is now. In our high school, she had, in her 4 years, it was like 120 goals and like 70 assists. It's something just absurd. Something crazy. But she stopped playing when she was 18, 19, basically. You know, she was always just crazy athlete, but I don't think that she was ever like really, really, really passionate about the sport to where she wanted to like push herself and sacrifice all the things that you have to do when you get to that age. So then I think she was kind of, I'm just going to live a normal life. I'm done with these kind of things. And then kind of played on the side a little bit. My brother played, I think, 2 years at university at the Division III level. And he was a good player too, but he's like a super genius, like photographic memory kind of thing. So he then started focusing on the coaching side and the scouting side and all of those things. And now his career path and that coaching thing is really starting to take off, and he's starting to really do well for himself.
After the university, you were some time without a team. Must have been quite difficult for you.
It was the worst. It was like, so I had 1 year where I didn't play, because it was really strange too, because my whole career trajectory was that I was going to be playing in the MLS. You know, I had been a pretty high profile player going into university. I was a 4-year starter at Indiana, which was a big deal. National championship. I was a captain. Things were lining up that I was going to go with MLS, and I was always thinking that was going to happen. And then, you know, the draft comes and goes, and I didn't get picked, which was just like a ton of bricks hits you. And then I just kind of figured, okay, well, something else will pop up. Maybe in the lower leagues in USL or NASL at the time, or going overseas or something like that. And, you know, I don't know the full story behind it, but in my opinion, my agent at the time, I hired a pretty big one. I think he just kind of screwed me off because I wasn't going to make him very much money more. And then I got no trials anywhere. So then I had 1 year where I was, you know, I wanted to stay around my university because I could train. So I was just sleeping out of my car, crashing on my friends' couches. I had all my stuff in my car. So there was a full year of doing that where I was just training on my own and just kind of hoping something would pop up. And it never did for about 8 months when St. Louis finally kind of popped up.
Do you still have any idea why you were not picked in the draft?
I mean, I think some people were foolish in my opinion. But, you know, I didn't have as strong of a senior year as I probably could have my last year in university. Our team struggled, where we were supposed to be the number one team in the country, and we had a really, really tough season. So I'm sure there were some factors, and I'm sure there were some things that scouts or whatever saw that they didn't like. Not that I necessarily agree with them, but, you know, I think that goes with it. And yeah, it was one of the toughest years of my life, but I've said this to people so many times that I think without that, I wouldn't have the career that I'm having now or the length of it, because there was like, you can't simulate just not having something like that and the hunger that brings you. So then there was, I was always a hard worker and I always loved the game, but then having it ripped from you like that and then having to like fight and claw to get it back, that's something, like I said, you can't simulate. And that's what's kind of driven me for a lot of my career, honestly.
I saw an interview with you in YouTube, and you mentioned that it's hard to break into MLS because there is no relegation and promotion. So it is that way.
Yeah.
It is harder because of the fact that there is.
Yeah, of course. Like it's that was one of the main reasons I left to come over to Europe. Was, you know, I had done my 2 years in USL, but like I said, it's really difficult to go from USL to MLS because you can't just be on a really good team, promote, and then prove yourself. You need to be playing really well and have some person who just really likes you and wants to bring you up a level. And that's, I don't know, for some people maybe that's easier, but I think for my style of play, it's a little bit harder for someone to just kind of pick me out and then want to bring me up a level. I'm better in a team where I can manipulate a team, or not manipulate, help a team grow, make a team better, make them move up. I think that's where my specialties would lie in. And then that's where I kind of realized I need to go into a system like that and kind of bet on myself that way.
Yeah, and then you mentioned that you went then to St. Louis to play in the USL. What kind of year was that?
Yeah, so I had the 2 years there. My first year was so much fun because I actually had one of my best friends from college. He had signed for the Chicago Fire, but he got loaned to St. Louis. So I had him, and then one of our best friends that we played with growing up, he signed because we were the same age. He just went to a different university. And then another player who we played with growing up that was 2 years older than us also signed. So now I had like a good group of friends that were there, and then we were all living by each other. It's my first year playing professionally. I had finally, you know, reached like one of my goals. So then that first year, even when at the very beginning I was kind of shaking off a lot of rust and trying to break into a lineup and all those things, which I think would have been frustrating if I didn't have that year where I didn't play. But I was just happy to get any minutes. So then as I'm slowly chipping away at more minutes, earning my spot at right back or left back or anything like that. It was great because then I'm with a positive attitude. I'm having fun with my friends. I'm getting my chances. And then as the season keeps progressing, I'm getting better and better and better. And then I'm finally breaking in. Then I'm a starting 11 player 100%. I had been on the USL Team of the Week a couple times. By the end of the season, our team started playing well, so the first year was great. And then the second season, I killed it in the off season, came in the best shape of my life, and I was just on fire that I thought like my second year was going to be my breakthrough, that I'm going to kill it this year, and then I'm going to launch from USL to whatever the next thing is. Maybe it's more money in the USL, maybe it's the MLS was the ultimate goal. And then I come in guns blazing, start off really well, and then, things don't work out like you always want to, and some other players started playing in my position, all of these things. I was used as a utility player most of the time. I played 7 positions that year, and I didn't take that well. Whenever I've reflected on it, I really let lack of playing time or not playing in the position that I wanted to or anything like that really affect me. I was like getting really down at practice or down on myself, all of these things, doubting if I can do what I wanted to do. But, ultimately I think it's another thing where it's just a learning experience, and it's good that happened. So the second year was a little bit rougher, but it ultimately led to me leaving America. So it ended up being a fantastic thing for me.
How would you compare the level of USL to Veikkausliiga?
It's really hard. That's like a really common question. That's it's almost 2 different games, because the US in the USL, it's a bit less organized. Like if you were to watch it, you can see that defensively players are a little bit more all over the place. But athletically, it's really strong. So the game's a bit more up and down, a little less tactical, but the players technically are just as good. You'll see a bit more players in the USL that'll just take you on and dribble you and be able to beat you with pace and those kind of things, but a little bit less of the players that'll just kind of control the balls. Different playing styles are just a bit different than Veikkausliiga. I think that's why it's kind of strange where you'll see some guys that have gone from Veikkausliiga to USL haven't done that great. And then also there's been USL guys who have come to Finland who haven't done great. Because I think it's just 2 kind of different ways of playing. So to compare the levels, it's kind of difficult.
I think your former teammate Eero Markkanen plays in USL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How is the I think most people here do not know how the hierarchy is below MLS. How is it? Which league is it? USL that is the next level below?
Yeah, so it goes MLS, then they have USL Championship is what it's called. Then they have USL League 1 is the 3rd tier. And then that's the end of the professional leagues. And then you have some of the amateur stuff that's a lot of times for college players in their summer and things like that. And then some guys who are just without contracts and looking for something. But yeah, so the USL League 1 is pretty new, I think within the last 2-3 years. But yeah, it's wild when you see USL Championship games, the amount of fans that there are at those games, the level's good. The USL League 1, even in the 3rd tier, gets a lot of those games get a few thousand on the fans, and you have some really good players playing there, pretty decent money. So the levels are pretty nice throughout. But obviously the MLS is a big jump. That's a huge league.
Well, after the St. Louis period, you started your career in Finland. How did you end up here?
Well, I knew I wanted to leave. I had lived in a very similar place my whole life, in Champaign, and then 2.5 hours away is where I went to university. 3 hours away is where I played professionally. So it was very, very similar, the whole place. And I didn't like where I was as a player and like who I was as a person, these kind of things. So I knew I needed a big change. So I was like, okay, I've heard of people going over to Sweden and Denmark, Finland. I've played with different teammates that have done that. So I asked them how they did it, basically. They told me about an agent. I had a connection to that agent through this coach named Brett Hall, who's a legend. He got me connected, and then it kind of took off from there, where we started communicating, talking. He was going to do whatever he could to get me out here. He was looking at anywhere in the Scandic region or whatever. I guess Finland's not Scandinavia, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then it was tricky though, because ideally you want to have a contract. I mean, the earlier the better, but like the latest you want to deal with is January or February, or else you start getting into a really sketchy area. And it had hit April, and I didn't have a contract. And I was living at my ex-girlfriend's parents' place in their basement because my ex-girlfriend's dad was a physio at my university, and I had messed up my knee a little bit. So he was rehabbing me, and then I was around training at my university, all of those things. So then it was just, I remember all these phone calls of my agent being like, yeah, this team in Kakkonen might take you in, blah, blah, blah. And it wouldn't happen. This team in the 4th division in Sweden, so Division 3 or whatever, they're thinking about bringing you in. They don't bring, and then they wouldn't happen. I remember Tornio was a club way up north, and it was like, he was like, they're going to bring you in. Like 100%. They're just working out details, basically. Finally, let's go. So then like a couple days go by and I'm like, hey, what's the deal? And they're like, they're taking someone else, kind of thing. And I remember like on that phone call, I was just like devastated. I'm sitting, and that was almost like last call, in my opinion, where I was just sitting there in the middle of the day in my girlfriend's parents' basement with no money, and then this team in the 3rd tier in Finland is not taking me, and it was just kind of like I'm just sitting there crying, can't figure out what is going on. Like, why is this happening again? So then a day or two later, girlfriend breaks up with me. So it's really raining on me, and so now I got to move out. So now I go home, and my mom's just like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know, just leave me alone. And so then it's like 2-3 days later, and my agent's like, okay, there's a team in the 4th tier in Sweden that will bring you in. I'm like, yep, I'll go. I don't care. And then he was like, do you want to hear where it's at? And I was like, yeah, I guess that's probably important. I should probably figure out where I'm flying to. So then it's a club called Nordvarmlands in Sweden. They're in the 4th tier, and it was on the border of Norway and Sweden, up in the mountains, basically. So that's the first club I went on trial for. And I showed up to there. It was a beautiful area, but there's 200 people in the town. So my first impression, I was like, oh, good Lord, this is... I was like, well, whatever. I mean, like, I'm desperate. I would have signed anywhere. So, I do my week on trial, and then, like, played well in the game. They said they were going to sign me. I'm just, let's go. Like, finally. Then I called my agent, tell him, and he was like, okay, well, before you do that, there's a team in Finland in the 3rd tier that'll bring you in. And then I was like, okay, can you tell me the name of the town? And he was like, yeah, it's Cardia or Cardis. Sorry about the pronunciation. but so I Google it, more than 200 people. Let's book a ticket. Let's go. So then I came over to Finland, and that's how that all got started.
That actually sounds a bit strange story because we all know that there have been so many kind of players on trial in Finland with, how would I say, with a bit strange backgrounds even. And your background was quite good. You have played in USL and so on. It sounds a bit strange.
Yeah, it was strange to me too. There's a lot of strange things, but it works out.
Yeah. So how was your first impression then of Finland? How did it go in Beko?
I loved it from the first minute I was in. But I mean, I think you could have put me on that point. You could have put me on a gravel road and with a ball out there, and I probably would have had a blast. But, you know, I come in and it was just like I was just ready to do whatever it took to get going because, you know, one of the main reasons I came over was because, like I said, it was hard to get up to the MLS. I wanted to play in a top league somewhere. So I was like, okay, well, I just got to start in the third tier, but the goal is to make it to Veikkausliiga. Like, so I show up and, you know, the club's not as professional as I would have, as I pictured it being. You know, it was only we were training 2 times a week and then games, basically. And then you only had a couple guys who were like full-time and at practice all the time. So sometimes you'd only have like 9 guys at practice. So that was a little strange for me. And it took some getting used to, but it was like after like a couple weeks and I was just kind of sitting there thinking about it and I was like, okay, well, this could be like an opportunity that nobody else gets then. Because if there's all this downtime, then I can work on all these technical skills that I have issues with. And then I'm going to get tons of playing time, which I needed because I wasn't playing as much the last year. So like, okay, well, let's just do this. So then I was just training with my roommates all the time. We'd go early to practice. On our off days, we were always training. After training, we were going to like our weight room we were staying at a language school. That sponsored the team. So it was like a really big learning year for me. And it was also, you know, my confidence was so low compared to what it used to be because I had that tough year of my last year at university was really hard for me. Then I had the bad year where I didn't even play. And then with St. Louis, we weren't winning. So I had 4 years where, you know, I wasn't having success in my career. So then this was also a chance for me to gain some confidence in that kind of thing. So then, you know, we're winning games. Confidence raises. I feel like I'm getting better. I feel like I'm progressing. So then it was easy to fall in love with the place I was at. So then it was like Finland was the best place on the planet for me because I was growing and I was getting so much better all the time.
Yeah, then you moved to 8th, and there's a bit of rivalry between the
a little bit.
clubs. Yeah, so I guess you didn't got popular in Karis then.
No, it's really funny. I would assume I can't swear on this podcast, but I remember, you know, I showed up and like one of my best friends on the team, I would always be like, who's like our rival? Who is? And they're like, oh, it's AIF. And I was like, oh. And I used to always just like mess with them. And like whenever we'd see them, I'd be like, oh, F AIF. But I, you know, and then just all the time. And like we would be at you know, there's only one bar to go to in the whole place. So then obviously we would see the AIF players and all that kind of stuff. And I would always sit there and be like, oh, F AIF, like all the time. And then the next year, yeah, it just kind of worked out that, yeah, I mean, it was 10 minutes away. So I went and trained with them after my season because there was like a month period. And then played well in training, got asked back on trial, and then worked out that way. I don't think there was too many hard feelings at BK. The guys still talk to me. So I think I was pretty good to all the people at the club. I don't think I ruffled any feathers to my knowledge. Maybe there's some people who hold a little bit of resentment, but there's certainly a rivalry, but it worked out. It worked out fine. It worked out great for me, obviously.
Yeah, and then at eighth, you were doing really good that season. You were close to promotion to Veikkausliiga.
Yeah, that was, to this day, my favorite year of playing. Like, that was, like, winning Ukkonen was great. The 2 years in Veikkausliiga were great, but, like, that year at eighth was my favorite year by far. Because we were just a bunch of, if you looked at our lineup before the season, it was, I think, 7 players that were playing in Kakkonen the year before were in our starting lineup. And then we had, like, a couple local guys. And then we had, like, a Canadian guy who hadn't been playing for 2 years and all this stuff. We were a bunch of no-names. And then our coach was a first-year coach from Spain with his assistant who was, like, 25 at the time or something like that, Guillaume, who's at SECO now. But then it was, like, we played this... I had never... I had always, like, seen how Spanish teams play with, like, the positional play and all of these things, and I would kind of study it, but you don't get it till you play it. So then to finally have him teaching us these things, and it was like the game looked totally different to me. I was learning so much in our team. We were playing great. The guys on the team were awesome. And then we were having so much success, and it was like the expectations of the club were to, like, just stay in the league, and we were in first place for a majority of the season. So it was just like this low expectations with huge results was like the perfect thing combined with how much I was progressing as a player. It was my favorite year of playing for sure.
And, I saw an interview with you where you said a lot of good things about the coach. So what do you think were his strengths as a coach? Yeah,
Gabri was probably my favorite coach that I've had a full season with so far. I really, really liked him. It's always easy to really like a coach too whenever we're winning all the time. So I guess there wasn't too much of the downside that you see of him. So who knows how it is when the going gets really tough, but I would assume he would be great there too. But it was just like what he was teaching us, and he was just so smart. And the spaces that he was getting me to see and the different rotations that we were learning, and you would see these, what I loved was you would see players who were like a 6 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10 to start the year. And then by the end of the year, they were 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, that kind of thing. So seeing the progression of these players, and then obviously as the team, that's what was just so amazing to see. I think it helped too that our team was very internally motivated. We had a lot of big characters on the team, and we were really driving too. So I think it made it, he didn't have to motivate us. He was just teaching us basically. Because I think we were all very high motivated players with not as high of a soccer IQ as him. So he was just kind of passing the knowledge, and then we were progressing the way we were, and then kind of beating the odds, and then we just came up a bit short at the end.
He has struggled a bit with his career after that season. You must be a bit surprised.
I mean, I think that's relative. Because I think if compared to that first season, it was going to be hard to match that, because he kind of caught lightning in a bottle a little bit with the players that he got. Because, I mean, it's not like they have a huge budget that they're going to be able to bring in these great players all the time. They kind of they got lucky with a lot of the guys. I mean, they brought up a bunch of Kakkonen guys who just ended up being league players in a year or two. I think the next year they were still pretty good, but he had some troubles with the I don't even know what the role's called. The head guy, the GM is what you would call it in America. And then they kind of parted ways halfway through. And then I can't remember where he was. Oh, Kotepe, yeah, of course.
He went to
Kotepe, yeah, Peppo.
Peppo in
Oh yeah, Peppo, that's right. He had that year there. Yeah, and they had a pretty strong team too. I guess they fell up short there. And then Kotepe last season, but that was always going to be a tough thing for him. That was always going to be a tough task. But now he's at TPS, so I guess we'll see. I mean, I'm sure it's like anything. It was probably good. I would assume it would be good for him that he had so much success early that you need a little bit of the struggles to. I'm sure he's figuring out too what he needs to improve and what he needs to do better, and then he'll probably come back and improve on it. Would be my guess.
And then after Ekenes, you went to Haka, and that first year in Haka you were totally dominant in Ykkönen. Mm-hmm. What was the secret of that team? Because it was something special.
Yeah, we were good. It's funny because they were a really similar team the year before, roster-wise. So the additions were Teme became the head coach. He was the assistant the year before. And then they added me and Niklas Freeberg were the starters that got added. And then sprinkled in some like good players like Tino Prome came, and he was like came in every now and then kind of guy, started some games. He was a good player. But really it was a super similar team. And I think, just adding, they were really good. I remember the year before when we would play them, they always gave us a really tough game, and I knew that they were good, and for some reason the results weren't coming. So then I think just adding maybe a little bit of like the leadership element, and then you get a couple people that got hot, like Salomo Oyola was just scoring left and right. And then, Popovic is like one of the best midfielders in all of Finland. Mm. He is unbelievable, and I think the way my game is, it elevated his game because I would just do a lot of the dirty work for him, and then it could really prop him up to do what he does best, and that's just play the ball anywhere, get the assist, do all of those things. And then we just complemented each other well. So then you got a forward that's scoring all the goals, you got the best midfielder in the league, and then you get the breaks, and then you get all of this confidence, and then now teams are fearing you. That's how you win 15 games in a row, and then you win the league. But, it was just like, it was a perfect storm, basically, and it worked out great, and it was obviously a fantastic year.
And in Haka you had Teemu Tainio as a coach, who is a legend in Finnish football. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I got to think so much of how my career has progressed because of him, because he took a huge chance on me, not necessarily bringing me in as a player, because I had played well this season before, and I had proven that I could do well in the league, but, he named me captain after 2 months or 6 weeks or something like that. And that's a huge risk to take when you consider all the people that had the club for a long time, and I'm a foreigner, and that's just not a common thing to happen, the combination of all those things. And then obviously that brings a little bit of notoriety to me. And then the confidence that it puts into me, and the confidence that he was showing and playing me, and all of those things, he's helped my career so much. And then some of the things tactically that he's helped me with, especially defensively, he's helped my game out so much. And then the craziest thing is when he would step into practice, and the way he can play, and the things he can see, and the way he hits a ball is just wild. So, I loved playing for him. he was great for my career, and I think they'll be good again this season. Honestly,
he's very passionate.
Very passionate. You could say.
But now you have once promoted from Ykkönen to Veikkausliiga. What do you think that the team needs to get promoted?
You need a lot. I mean, luckily, I think we have one of the main things, and that's a lot of talent. I mean, if you're going to get promoted, you have to have good players. So we got that. But now it's just going to be about like getting everybody on the same page. How does everybody gel together? How do people fight for one another? Do you have players that get along? There's a lot that goes into it that isn't even necessarily like on the field. Those kind of things, the things that you like really see. So it'll be when I can really tell when a team like really starts playing for each other and it's really a winning team is when like I lose the ball and I turn around and I have 3-4 people hunting to get the ball back, and it's not them pointing fingers or like throwing their hands up in the air because we just lost the ball and they didn't get it. You know, there's so much that goes into it when you're like really fighting for one another, and that's when a team wins. Because there's so many good players in this league, there's so many of that, but it's when you can get everybody all on the same page, all fighting for one thing. There's no egos. It's just we're just going out there, and I don't care if I score. I don't care if I get an assist. I only care that we just won this game 1-0. And I don't care how it went in the back of the net. But we just picked up 3 points, and now we're going home. That's when it's a good team.
I know that this is really early for this question because you have been in Jaro for so short time. But do you see that Jaro has those elements that are needed for a promotion?
Yeah, of course. I think especially when you're looking at some of the guys we're bringing in too, I think they add a bit of that edge that I think is required to promote, because you do need this like assertive, confident, we'll do whatever it takes kind of attitude. And when you look at some of the guys, like when you look at a Tendang, who I think when I've seen him play before, you see him as a number 10 who's just kind of like flair and attacking and those kind of things. But then when you actually meet him, you look at practice and he's staying around and he's picking up cones. He's helping out on defense. He's giving people advice. He's not selfish. It's those kind of like little things that, especially coming from like a senior player, that really when you look at his resume, he could kind of brush some things off and be, I'm too good for this. But then when you see a player like that, that's going to rub off on everybody. When you see like a Adam Vidiskog, the way he trains, how hard he goes into every tackle every single day, those things will rub off. So I think it's gonna take time for everything, for the real mentality to come out. I think if I'm looking at some of the players that Jaro has had, now I've only played against him and now he's only been in training a couple of days, but Yuki Brunel, that's a big time mentality. He's a winner. You can tell on that just from watching him in a passing drill, the way he acts. So I think we have the players that want to win. We have all the tools to have the right mentality. Now it's just about like making everything gel together and making things work.
You have been chosen the captain in both AIF and Haka. What do you think is the reason that you have been chosen as a captain already in your first year in a new team, and especially as a foreign player?
Yeah, it's always. I mean, it's obviously a huge honor, and in some senses, it's kind of. It's surreal or kind of wild that it happens, but at the same time, I understand. You know, I'm a pretty good leader, like, and that's what it comes down to, and it's not something that's just natural. I work on it. I'll study these kind of things, as corny as it might sound. I'll sit there and watch videos on how to be a better leader, how to be a better captain. I'll read different books, all these kind of different things. I take it very seriously. It's something I strive to do. I think my work ethic goes a long way too, where at any practice I'm treating it like a game 110%. And I think that's just kind of players can see the way I'll just run and sprint and tackle and all of those kind of things, and I think just immediately they're like, oh, that's a leadership quality, is the hard work. So I think the way I train, I think the way maybe I handle myself in the locker room and all of those things, talking to different people, I think it just kind of works really well. I understand too, I'm not the perfect leader. I'm not the perfect captain. Every year I always try to reflect on things I could have done better and the way I handled different things and how I could have been better. For example, last season, when things were going bad for us, I think I was getting a little bit too emotional about some of the losses. And maybe I would come into training maybe a little bit too down, and then that rubs off on the team a little bit. Because especially as a captain, everything you do matters, and every single player is going to look to you. So I understand that now if I'm ever presented that opportunity again, that's something that I need to work on. And there's been years in the past when I've been a captain that I haven't done as well at some things as well. So I think it's just always just improving always on that as well.
What kind of a leader are you then?
That's a tough question. I don't know. I'm not a... I don't know, because I think when some people will picture the captain, the leadership, they almost think of like Roy Keane, where it's like the very abrasive, in your face, hey, you need to do this better, blah, 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 that kind of thing. That's not really my style. I don't think that works with players anymore. Maybe it worked in the 90s and early 2000s. I don't think that players respond to that anymore. Of course, if someone is not working hard, I'll want to strangle them. But if they miss a pass or something like that, it's more of just positive, onto the next action, always staying in the moment, those kind of things. If someone makes a mistake, I'll be one of the first people there to say, like, hey, just let's keep going. I'm about to make a mistake in 5 minutes. It's going to be okay. All of those kind of things, and just trying to keep everybody focused on the next action, because that really is all that matters when you're playing in the game. And it's kind of like that. I think that kind of answered the question.
Yeah. You told that you study leadership.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to choose one book of leadershiping, what would that be?
Captain Class is as good as it gets. Yeah, definitely that one. I can't think of the author right now, but essentially what the book is about is that this sports columnist, he was trying to figure out who are the best teams of all the sports ever and what do they have in common. And basically he goes through the whole criteria on what makes them the best team, blah, blah, blah. And then what he figured out was that it all had to do with they all had a captain. That was however he explains it, as a good captain. And all of those things, and then they describe on the different leadership qualities that these different captains had and all of those things. And it's fantastic. It's a great one.
So you work both as a player for Jaro, obviously, but also as a coach for Ibeco. How do you think it works to have those two roles?
Yeah, we're still working on the exact role that I'll have at JBK right now. We're still discussing it with Chris and everybody, exactly everything I'll be doing. But I think it's a really important transition from a player into eventually whenever I will be a coach. it's gaining that experience and all of those things. But it was made very clear when I was coming here, and then I'm a player first. Jaro's always going to come first, but I'm going to give everything I have to JBK and try to progress these players. Because I think they're in situations that are my passion, which I love seeing the progression of players. I loved going from Kakkonen to Ykkönen to Veikkausliiga. And I know that's what these players' goals will be, is trying to progress them. So I'm going to love working with them. I think I'll typically be with them at majority of their practices and then all of the games that I can get to according to the schedule with Jaro.
What kind of football will your team play when you are coach?
Oh, the best. I think that's always that's interesting. I'm always kind of changing my mind on how I would like to play offensively and defensively. I think the game always changes, so that makes it really difficult. Where I think if you were to ask me this question, like, for example, defensively, if you were to ask me this question a year or two ago, I would say, oh, you got to high press. You got to press. You got to win it back. You need to force them into the central channels. You went in the middle. Boom. You ram it right back down your throat. But now, as within the last year, whenever I'm watching games or whenever I've been playing, now I think it's more of, if you sit back a little bit close to your half or anything like that, where before you might think that that's a defensive style, where really I almost think of that as like an offensive style, because now you're inviting the team to you. You win the ball, now you have all of this space to go into and to attack with runners, and you can do it quickly. Whereas opposed to if you high press them, they kick it long, now you're trying to break down 11 opponents. So I don't know, but I'm sure my opinion on that will change in 6 months, maybe even less. Offensively, yeah, I like things to look nice aesthetically with the passing and playing out of the back a little bit. But I do really like fast attacks and getting in behind and always just bang, 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 trying to get runners in at all times. That's my ideal style.
What do you do in your free time?
Free time. Do a fair amount of reading, watching Netflix, watching lots of games, all of those things. During the season, I'll typically watch at least 2 games from the opponent that we're going to play. Trying to figure out some different things that they're going to try to do, or the people in my positions, what ways they like to turn, all of those kind of things. Maybe I can pick off a pass and get a goal that way. Review my own game in touches, all of those things. And then, especially during the season, that's right in the middle of so many of the other leagues that are playing too. So I'll watch those games as well. So, a lot of soccer.
When I did research for this podcast,
This is maybe the moment when you have right to remain silent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found a video in YouTube where you are singing a Justin Bieber
Jesus
song.
Christ.
What would you like to? Could you tell us a little bit about that? What is the story behind?
That video is awesome, first of all. But my sister was getting married, and there was always like an ongoing joke from when I was like 17 till I was like in my early 20s that I looked like Justin Bieber because of my hair, essentially. And maybe the face too. Good looks, hopefully. But so then there was like a video they did where it was kind of share a special memory that you've had with my sister Megan and Seth, brother-in-law. Well, the idea for me was that I wasn't going to tell about a memory. I was going to make a new one kind of thing. So then me and my friends recreated Baby by Justin Bieber. And it's an absolute banger of a video and song. Sure, you can go watch. I don't even care. I'm not even that embarrassed about it. It's great. The choreographed dancing.
Yeah.
It's
I have
nice.
I have one of my friends in a dress and a wig. He has a hairy chest and a beard. He's looking good, Morgan.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's top class.
Yeah, looking good is one way to describe it, but you have been in Finland for several years now.
Mm-hmm.
Are there still some habits which you think are weird in Finland?
Oh man, now I gotta think. Oh, the amount that you guys eat black licorice is one of the most vile things I've ever seen. My favorite one that's like the Swedish Finn thing is that thing. I love that. Anyways, I remember the first time people were doing that my first year. I was like, "What is wrong?" I thought he had a tick or something. I thought there was some kind of Tourette's. But then I was asking her like, "No, that just means like yeah." I was like, "Oh, okay."
So what is your relationship to licorice?
Not a good one. That's one of the few foods I do not like. I can deal with red, the black licorice not so much.
It's funny that we have everything with licorice flavor, like lemonade and ice cream and football is getting more and more popular in the US. How do you see the future of football there?
Yeah, I mean, the progression that soccer's made in America since I was a kid is unbelievable. Like, no joke, I used to get made fun of that I was a soccer player when I was growing up. Like, that was like the sissy sport, I guess, like people would kind of put it. But now you're looking, you still have football, baseball, basketball that are more popular, but I mean, now it's probably the fourth most popular sport in America, and it's continuing to rise. The MLS is getting better and better every year. And now you're looking at the players for our national teams and the club that they're playing for, and all of these young players that are getting bought for tens of millions of dollars every week, it seems like. The progression's obvious, and it's amazing to see, because it was always like growing up, it was always like the dream to see USA actually be really good. Yeah, and the first time I ever watched soccer was 2002 World Cup when we made the quarterfinals, and that's what like really, really made me fall in love with the game. But since then, it's kind of, yeah, we've been okay, but nothing amazing. We'll occasionally have like Landon Donovan at Everton, things like that. But now we have players at Juventus and Barcelona and Leipzig and all over the place now. So now it's incredible to kind of see some of these guys and the way they play. And yeah.
And it's more and more US educated players in the national team as well. Like back 10 and 15 years ago, there were a lot of like US guys who were grown up in Germany or England or so.
Yeah, it's just showing how much the MLS has grown and how much like if you guys would have seen some of my practices when I was a youth player, you'd be appalled. Like, when I look back at them, I'm like, good Lord, how did I learn how to play? but like now you watch the training sessions and they're legit. And I think that comes a lot with, and I've said this and I could be totally wrong, but I think there's got to be something to it. And it's just how much the internet and all of those things have progressed. Where I think when I'm 2006, 2007, that's when I'm a youth player. I think the education of soccer and how to train and all those things was so much less accessible in America. Where now you can jump online and you can see like, oh, this is how Bayern Munich does their training sessions. Oh, this is how these guys do it, blah, 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 blah. So now people can learn more and more and more in America. Coaches are getting better. Now that there's been a generation of good players, they learn from those guys as opposed to me, who, no offense to my dad, he was my first coach and he never kicked a soccer ball in his life. So I think just naturally things are going to get better and better.
Yeah, I think we have been going on for more than an hour already. So I think we are close to the end. So it wasn't that bad.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, same. It was good.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
No problem.
Definitely.
Anytime.
Thanks for coming to our show.
Great.
And good luck for the season.
Thank you.